Welcome to the quick start video for the attendance module. This video will guide you in managing attendance related configurations and customizing your account to meet your specific needs. Let's start. First, click on Attendance module and look for the configuration option. The attendance configuration is divided into different tabs. First is the Configuration tab. It's the general settings and is divided into different sections. The settings here will affect all users in the system. The working hours section is where we create your company's default work schedule. Employees will use the default schedule if they are not assigned to a schedule. Now, set up the working hours, break time minutes, and the rest day and off day, and set up the number of hours that the employee must work for a full day and half day. If this option Add Roster Standard Hour to Actual Hour is ticked, the system will automatically add in the standard hours to the employee's actual hour when the employee is on full day or half day leave. Choose the time zone and set how many hours the employee must work before break time will be deducted. Then save the changes. The next part is the attendance calculation method. Here, you can set up the OT calculation method for your company. This is the general setting for all employees, but you can make changes later on the employee setup page if some employees follow a different OT calculation method. Now, choose the OT calculation method you want to use. We have four options. The first option is none. This means that no OT calculation will be considered. Second is end time. The OT calculation is based on the end time. For example, an employee worked until 10 p.m., but her official end time is 8 p.m. The system will consider that the employee has worked 2 hours of OT. The third option is standard time. The OT calculation is based on the number of hours worked for the entire day. So, if an employee is required to work for 8 hours and the employee worked for 10 hours, the employee will have 2 hours of OT. And the last one is weekly. The OT calculation is based on the number of hours required in a week. For example, the employee is required to work 44 hours a week, and if for an entire week the employee worked for 48 hours, the OT will be 4 hours. If OT calculation is weekly, you must select a sub-policy for incomplete week. If this option Ignore negative OT is ticked, the system will disregard if the employee did not fulfill the number of working hours. In the public holiday policy, you can specify what is the general rule if an employee works on public holidays. We have three options. The first option is to treat as working day. It means the public holiday is treated as normal working day. OT hours to be computed by the system will be based on the regular OT policy. The second option is paid one day. It means that the hours worked by the employee on a public holiday will be paid an extra day. The third option is to be given off in lieu. It means an extra time off will be credited by the leave admin to the employee who worked on a public holiday. You can set if no pay leave will be deducted from the attendance reports. If ticked, the standard hours will be the same when employee takes a no pay leave. If unticked, standard hours will be deducted. You can set the break time during off days. You can set the rounding up policy to round up the hours if you want. On the next part, you can define the OT grace period, deductions, and rounding. The OT grace period allows you to define when the system should start counting overtime. If set to 15 minutes, then the system will calculate the OT 15 minutes after the official end time. You can also set any deductions or rounding up or down. The late grace period allows you to specify the number of minutes before an employee will be considered late. The under hours grace period allows you to specify the number of minutes before the system will consider that the employee did not fulfill the number of hours worked. Then save the changes. For the OT grace period and late grace period, you can select if applicable to company level. It means that the settings you will make here will be applicable to all employees, or you can toggle and set for individual employees. Save the changes by clicking the Submit button, then click on this link. Employee level setting, it will take you to a page where you can set the OT and late grace period settings for individual employees. Moving on to the clocking preferences. If you have employees working night shifts or clocking out the next day, you must enable this option, Allow Next Day Clock Out. It's recommended to set this to 4 hours to avoid triggering unnecessary notifications. If you allow employees to edit their clock in and out time, you can set the permission by selecting the applicable settings here. The first option is to allow employees to edit their clock time for the current day. The second option is to allow employees and admins to edit break time if needed. The third option is to allow employees to enter clock in and out time for different dates. The fourth option is to allow employees to enter clock out time for previous dates. If this is enabled, the system will not allow the editing of clock time if there's existing data. It will only allow you to add a new record for a previous date. You can also set whether your company is using single or multiple clock in and out. You can also set if you need the employees to enter remarks during their clock in and out. If you need your employees to clock in and out with client, location, or project information, you can use this. If you enable this, a new tab will be visible here in configuration, and the header depends on what you've selected. This is useful when you have employees going around different clients, locations, or projects, and you want to know where they are when they clock in or out. Let's proceed to the clocking approval, where you can specify who can approve the attendance record. The first option is to enable approval by attendance administrator. The second option is to enable approval by group administrator. If you have department heads or managers who are approving attendance for the team, this option should work for you. The third option is to enable workflow approval, allowing the attendance records to go through a workflow from employees to managers and to the administrator. Then lastly, no approval required. Now on mobile devices. The first setting is to allow clock in or out via mobile or web. The second setting is to enable face detection on mobile devices. If enabled, the system will only allow employees to clock in and out when the mobile or the device detects the face. This option, Ignore if device does not support face detection, will allow the employee to still clock in and out even if the device being used does not support face detection. In geofencing setup, you can enable this setting, Require GPS to be enabled on mobile device. It will track the location of the employee where they do the clock in and out. The next setting is to set the geofencing radius or boundary. Geofencing is a technology that allows you to set a virtual boundary around a geographical location so your employee can log in. Tick the box to enable geofencing. 150 meters in radius is the effective range for geofencing. Now, this option, Require users to be within geofence to clock in or out, will require the employee to be within the radius set before they can clock in and out. If enabled, you need to set or pin the location address that will be used for geofencing purposes. Don't forget to save. Moving on to the advanced settings. First, we have the split shift feature that allows you to set a different work time each day for each employee in the roster. This is useful in the food and beverage and security industries, where employees sometimes need to work on two different shifts on a single day. The site assignment in roster enables the admin to choose the site assignment for each user daily. The OT request feature allows your employees to request any OT hours to be converted into cash or time off. Cash will be processed through payroll, while time off will be credited as leave adjustment. The OT request is not applicable to employees whose OT computation is based on weekly. It's only applicable for standard and end time. Any overtime rendered by the employee can only be processed via the OT request function. Also, the clocking approval should either be set to enable approval by group administrator or enable workflow approval. You need to set up how many hours is the equivalent to a one-day leave. Set the other needed settings and then save the changes. The next tab is the employee setup. The employee setup page allows you to specify attendance policies for individual employees. In attendance users, you can edit each employee's policies that they follow. You can change their time zone, the public holiday policy, the OT formula that they follow, and the other settings. This is the manual way of setting individual employees' policy, though we also have the bulk way in import page, where you will use a CSV file to import the necessary policies and settings for all employees. In the Assign Attendance Users page, you can allow or disallow employees from using the attendance system by ticking or unticking the box. The Set Reference Photo page is where you can set reference photos for safe clock and attendance verification alert. You can assign reference photos used by the system to countercheck the details of the employees clocking in and out. Now, let's proceed to the Reminder Setup page. This is where administrators can set up the different attendance-related reminders and notifications that can be sent to the employees or administrators. First, the clocking reminder that will be sent to the employees if they fail to clock in or out. Set when will the email reminder be sent. Then select whether the employee, attendance administrators, or group administrators will receive the reminder. Select whether the reminder message is for clocking in or out. The system already created a template message for you that you can use. In the Notification tab, this is where additional notifications can be enabled for your account. The first setting is to enable roster notification. If a shift is assigned to the employee, a notification will be sent out to them if this option is ticked. Next setting is early clock-in notification. You can enable this option if you want the administrators to be notified when employee clocks in before the scheduled shift start time. Then select who will receive the notification. Then the unscheduled clocking notification. This will send a notification to administrators if the employee clocks in on a day that they are not expected to work. Then select who will receive the notification. You can also set the OT notification if you want to be notified when the employees have reached a certain number of overtime hours. Don't forget to save the changes. The next tab is the Group Setup. The Group Setup page allows you to assign the employees to designated groups to be managed by different managers. For example, if you have multiple departments with designated managers, you can use this to delegate admin work, such as the updating of time clock or approval of attendance records. Once you've set up the groups, you may now assign the employees to their designated groups. There are two ways to assign the employees to the groups, either here in Group Setup page or in Shift Assignment in Roster. Lastly, the page or tab Client, Location, or Project is an additional page if it's enabled in Clocking Preference section. The header shown here will depend on what you have selected in Clocking Preference earlier in the configuration page. It could be Client, Location, or Project. Add all the locations, clients, or projects here in the Setup page. The next tab is where you assign employees to the locations, clients, or projects. You can assign an employee to multiple locations, clients, or projects, and then they can select the specific one when they clock in and out. Once you've configured all the necessary settings, you're good to go. That would be all for our attendance quick start video. Thank you for watching.